At last year's NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship, Penn State used all of its home court advantage to be in position to edge Oklahoma.
Last year was a great event at Penn State for us. You look forward in your career to hosting a championship, and it had all the makings of a championship year with 150 alumni back, and Gene Whetstone, our patriarch, at the helm there, who'd won 9 championships in the stands. We couldn't have had it scripted any better than the way it turned out.
Both schools had a great meet last year. As it often does, it comes down to the last rotation.
We did a great job on the high bar and rings, but I'm pretty sure the whole team could have done a lot better on the vault.
As Oklahoma was struggling in vault, the Nittany Lions were strong and steady on rings.
Home gym advantage worked for the guys at Penn State. Now we're at our home, and this is our chance to win the national title.
Indeed, the Cardinal comes in as the #1 ranked team over Oklahoma, Penn State, and California. And we'll see who calls themselves NCAA national champions next. Welcome to the campus of Stanford University and the NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship presented on ESPN by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. The last 2 years, the home team has won the national title. Stanford, no doubt, hoping that trend continues here in 2008. These are the 6 teams competing for the national championship. The top 3, Stanford, Oklahoma, and Penn State, all separated by less than a point in the national rankings. Hi, everybody. Along with 2-time Olympic gold medalist Bart Conner, I'm Mike Gleason. Great to have you with us. And Bart, speaking of Stanford, from day one, they said their goal was to win the national championship. And they've been ranked #1 for most of the season. But in their conference championship meet, they were upset by Oklahoma. How heavily does that weigh on their minds?
Well, I think it certainly adds a little doubt in their minds, and it boosted the confidence of the Oklahoma Sooners all season long. As you mentioned, most gymnastics experts agree that Stanford is the deepest team by far. They're at home. They have an enthusiastic crowd ready to cheer them on. They are expected to win if they hit. But if they don't, and let's face it, there are 6 athletes on each event, just the best 4 scores count. So if Oklahoma, Penn State, Illinois, and Cal are on, they could give them a run for their money. And like every year, Mike, I'm sure it's going to come down to the final event.
Keep in mind, not only is a national championship at stake, but the Olympic Games just around the corner. That could throw some fuel on the competitive fires.
Well, it certainly could, and I certainly think that that validates the quality of the gymnastics that we're seeing here. I mean, there are several gymnasts out here who are in the mix to be on the U.S. Olympic team. People like Jonathan Horton, David Sender, Sho Nakamori. And so it just adds to the quality of the competition that we're seeing here. The gymnastics we'll see today is as good as you'll see anywhere in the world.
And Bart, the scoring different this year.
Completely different. In fact, this is what they call the open-ended scoring system. The judges add up all the skills and the elements that the gymnasts do in the routine, and then they deduct from perfect 10 execution scores. So look for scores in the range between 13 and 16 points, and as we go on, I'll explain some of the details as well.
Well, rotation #1 as we get things going. Illinois will open on the floor. Stanford, the #1 team in the country, will open on parallel bars. The Cardinal ranked 3rd in that event, and Oklahoma on the vault, they are #1. But let's start off on the parallel bars. Jason Shen, a redshirt junior from Newton, Massachusetts, twice scoring a 14.65, a season high for Jason.
Now, typically, parallel bars is one of the lower scoring events. Stanford will finish today on the highest scoring event, the vault. Jason Shen has very clean execution. Oh! Unbelievable. He fell off on essentially the first move of the routine, a Diamondov.
Rocky start there for Stanford. A lot going on. 6 different events simultaneously. Mark Williams, the head coach at Oklahoma, keeping his eye on the vault. And Russell Shasheen. Remember Russell Shasheen 2 years ago in Norman, how he stuck that landing.
And this guy is just so enthusiastic and pumped up. He really is one of the emotional leaders for this team. At 6 feet 3 inches tall, he just shouldn't be a gymnast, and yet he's world class, especially on the floor in the vault. He's going to do a Yurchenko-style vault with a double twist. Nice. Good start for the Sooners there.
His high this year on the vault, a 16.050.
You heard Jonathan Horton at the top of the show say this is where Oklahoma could have done better last year. Off to a great start.
Russell Shasheen, he took 2nd at the Rocky Mountain Open in this event, a 15.90. Moments ago, we saw Shen fall off the parallel bars, a 13.350. Not a strong start there for them. Michigan Wolverines now, Philip Goldberg getting ready to go up on the rings. Kurt Golder, the head coach at Michigan, Bart, not happy with the Wolverines' 4th place finish at the Big Ten Championships.
Well, they're quite strong on the rings, in fact. They're ranked 6th in the country on this event. Philip Goldberg has a very high start value in this routine, and we'll point out the details of the scoring system as we go. The judges are looking for moves where you do a strength move like that, and if you press from one strength move up to another strength move against gravity going upwards, you have a possibility of earning bonus points like he did there, from a Maltese up to a planche. It's an enormous amount of strain on the shoulders. You can see his arm is heavily wrapped, his left arm. He had injuries last year, which kept him out of competition.
Goldberg, a redshirt sophomore from Ringgold, Georgia, scored a 15.60 at the Big Ten Championships. That's a season high.
He has good form and good control of the rings, which is important. Here comes the dismount. A solid laid out double back. Now some gymnasts will twist that and do a more difficult dismount for bonus points. But in terms of execution, very well done for Michigan here in the first rotation.
And Philip Goldberg from Michigan showing some emotion as he sticks his landing. He scored a 9.20 on the rings as a freshman in Norman 2 years ago. Of course, as Bart mentioned, scoring is different now. He comes up with a 15.5. Now let's go back to the parallel bars. Ryan Lieberman, he won the title in this event against Cal and Michigan, scoring over 15 in 5 events this year, Bart.
And while we were over at the rings, Josh Dixon scored only a 13.15 for Stanford, so this is not the start that they had intended on for sure. Lieberman very good on these underbar swinging elements and moves called peach baskets. He's strong in this event. Just a freshman. Tom Gleelmy very happy with the composition of this team. He's got 4 seniors and 6 freshmen. Very talented group of over on what is called a Diamondov 1 1/4. He saved it remarkably, but he'll still have a pretty substantial deduction. This is not what Stanford had hoped for in the first rotation, no question about it. A lot of pressure. Let's take a look at what happens. This move is called a Diamondov 1 1/4. He's supposed to pirouette back into the middle of the parallel bars. He's a little too far outside, and that will be a substantial deduction.
Bart, it's early, but again, we point out they've been #1 all season long. Are you surprised they're feeling a little bit of pressure, or are they?
It might be, and certainly there are 6 athletes on each event. The top 4 scores count. Well, they've had 3 shaky performances, which means they're going to have to count a lower score than they intended in the first rotation.
Tim McNeil, the senior out of Falls Church, Virginia, the senior from the Golden Bears of Cal, the Nissen Emery finalist for Barry Weiner. Barry Weiner very excited to be at Stanford. They beat Stanford once this year, and of course, very little travel for the Golden Bears.
That's true, just across the bay. This team is incredible on the parallel bars, quite good on the rings, and also on the high bar. He's recovering from a shoulder surgery over the summer. And you see he does a lot of pirouetting skills, and it's very important when a gymnast does a pirouetting skill that he finishes the move as close to possible to vertical. And some of these pirouettes are going past the vertical. As you can see that one, he catches almost close to the bottom of the swing. The judges are being much more critical this year under the new scoring format, keeping an eye on whether they finish those pirouettes near the handstand. Double-double, and a pretty big step there on the dismount. A little bit sloppy from McNeil, but we'll see more excellent performances from him later. Here are those pirouetting skills. Now watch when he does a move here. He pirouettes, and he gets his hand on the bar when he's about 45 degrees past the handstand. That would be a minor deduction for something like that. You want to try to finish those moves right at the top. This is the double twisting, double back in the tuck position, and just a little loss of control on the landing.
Tim McNeil, now keep in mind his high score on the high bar was 14.50, a 13.95 for Tim McNeil of the Golden Bears of Cal. Back with more from Stanford University in Rotation 1 after this.
The NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship is presented on ESPN by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We'll pick you up. And in part by the first ever G8 from Pontiac, the official performance machine of the NCAA.
Welcome back to Stanford University as we continue rotation number 1. Paul Ruggieri out of Illinois, another one of those talented freshmen you referred to.
He is sensational, and particularly on this event. Watch this opening tumbling run. Piked Arabian double front. Yoshi Hayasaki, the head coach, has been there 32 years, and he's so pleased with this group of athletes. 6 seniors, 5 very talented freshmen. So he'll graduate out a lot of talent, but he's also got a lot to work with in the next few years. Look at his third tumbling pass, back to back to back. Good combination of front tumbling skills The judges look for tumbling skills forward, backward, sideward, and they do a move like that. That's called a V-seat press to a handstand. That fulfills a requirement called a non-acrobatic skill, which is one of the things the judges are looking for. In each event, the judges have to see 5 different types of skills to fulfill all the element group requirements. In other words, the gymnast has to show complete mastery in all aspects of this particular apparatus, and Gary is doing a nice job. Good front tumbling, good back tumbling. Here's his last tumbling run. And he drills a full twisting double. Let's take a look at this dismount. Double back with a full twist. He lands with his feet just a little bit apart. That'll be a small deduction. But you cannot deny that he completely drills it. Boom. That's impressive to the judges. That's the last thing they see.
Paul Regari out of New York, 11 titles. That leads to Illinois. He's number 3 on the floor as far as the national rankings. A 15-4, pretty good score. Speaking of impressive rookies, Bart, how about this guy, Stephen Legendre from Oklahoma?
Oh, boy, and if this is the look to the future of what Oklahoma can expect in terms of talent, this guy has it all. He is incredibly powerful, just a freshman. Gifted athlete on every level. Handspring double front. Nice control on the landing. That vault starts from a 6.6 start value. He doesn't even quite get his heels driven enough, but he knows how to pull his legs apart and find the landing so strong he can almost muscle a good, strong landing. Well done for such a young man.
Well done. That might be an understatement. 16.40 for Stephen Legendre, the rookie from Oklahoma. That equals his high this year on the vault. Let's go back to the parallel bars. Sho Nakamori, member of the 2008 national team, and this is his strength, right, Barton? They could use a good score.
He is spectacular on the parallel bars when he is on. He was a member of the World Championship team in 2007 for the United States. Very nice technique throughout. Underbar work, skills over the bar. This is another one of those young men that I think could be in the mix when the U.S. Oh, no, my goodness. Isn't that a surprise? On a rather simple move, a stutz to one bar, his hand slipped. That's just indicative of how tight Stanford is in this first rotation. It's like they're being too careful. Luckily, he finished up strong, but that was an uncharacteristic mistake.
It's too much thinking, not enough reacting, man. Just going out and doing it.
It's a rather simple move for him. Kind of underswung it. It was as if he wasn't really hanging it out there. And then even as he got ready for the dismount, this last move here called a stutz is a little short of the handstand. They just seem too cautious in this first rotation. I am surprised. They let it all hang out in the qualifying round, but today they are tight.
The 15.15 for Sho Nakamori. Let's go back to the vault with Jonathan Horton, Mr. Everything for Oklahoma. 15 All-American titles, 5 national titles, breaking your records, of course, and still hoping to make the Olympic team.
And he can do a big vault. It's a handspring double front, the same that we saw from Legendre. Oh! Over-rotated and slaps a hand down. That's uncharacteristic for Horton.
Yet he still gets a 15.75.
I mentioned this is the same vault as Legendre. Let's look at them side by side. Horton on the left actually gets his heel drive a little stronger than Legendre, which causes him to misjudge the landing and over-rotate.
Legendre looking a lot like Horton did 3 years ago on the vault when they beat Ohio State in the national championship. So after rotation 1, Oklahoma sits on top, but these scores obviously will change throughout the competition. Bart, we heard your thoughts on what you expect to develop here. What about some of the coaches and the players? How do they see this competition developing today?
Well, you know, here we have Stanford and the University of Oklahoma. They're going to be going head-to-head. It's going to be a dogfight tonight, and you know, it's definitely going to be an intense competition from the first routine to the last one. It's a test of endurance more than anything.
Stanford is definitely the favorite team. They're here at home. They've been ranked #1 the last half of the season.
And the team that has the greatest depth, the greatest focus, and the greatest character and heart is the team that's going to win.
Welcome back to Stanford University and the NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship presented on ESPN by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. At the top of the show, we mentioned the scoring system has changed this year, moving over to the international scoring system. In today's Home Depot coaching clinic, Bart Connor gives some more insight on those responsible for handing out the scores.
The toughest officiating job in all of sports is that of a collegiate gymnastics judge. Let's think about it. In baseball, a home plate umpire has two choices. It's either a ball or a strike. In diving, each judge throws an execution score and the rest is tabulated by a computer. Well, in men's collegiate gymnastics, the judge must tabulate the difficulty score of 9 most difficult skills in the routine, plus the dismount. Then they must confirm that the gymnast performed each of the 5 element group requirements for that specific event. Then they must take note of all the execution deductions for things like body positions, execution form, and angles. For instance, on high bar, when a gymnast does a pirouetting skill, there are different deductions depending on whether the gymnast finishes perfectly vertical, 30 degrees past, 45 degrees past, or 90 degrees past the handstand. It's very complicated. So the next time you see a judge scratching his head trying to get a score out, a correct score when NCAA titles are on the line, and he's only got a minute to do it, give him some love. It's a tough job. I'll be up in the TV booth. That's my kind of job.
And you're very comfortable up here. It sounds like, to me, like the judges might have bought dinner for you.
Oh, yeah, well, that could have happened. It's tough, I tell you, and I'm much happier up here. It's a much better vantage point.
You saw the rotation, too, coming up here for Stanford. Remember, they opened on the parallel bars, and they struggled. Well, they're ranked #1 on the high bar. And this is Dylan Carney, a senior from Dartmouth, Massachusetts.
Oh, he's great here, too. And Stanford has gotten back into the rhythm a little bit here on high bar. The performances before Carney much cleaner, and they seem to be finally loosening up here in the second rotation. Dylan Carney, very good at those pirouetting type skills that I mentioned. Watch how close he gets to the handstand when he does them. Little out of line. Remember, the judges are adding up all the difficulty elements, including a release move like that, combinations of moves. So at the same time they're adding up points for the moves you do, they're deducting for form errors and technical mistakes. So you're doing addition and subtraction at the same time. I don't think I can do it.
No, the judge's job is a tough one. Dylan Carney, the NCAA co-champ on the high bar 2 years ago in Norman, pulls a 14.950. Is he happy with that?
Very clean execution and very, like I said, back on track now after a rough start on the parallel bar.
Chris Brooks, the junior for Oklahoma out of Houston, Texas. And Bart and guys like Jonathan Horton and Taki Abdul-Simmons talk about team. Here's a guy that flies under the radar, but they get a lot of mileage out of this young man.
Absolutely, and you talk about the top 2 stars like Taki Abdul-Simmons and Jonathan Horton, what they mean to this team, but it's the other 4 scores in that lineup that'll really determine who wins this team championship today. And Chris Brooks is one of those kind of guys who is very dependable. He has a high level of difficulty. He seems to be fearless. He just rips through his routine. He doesn't hold back on anything, and I like that about him. You can tell the mindset for the Sooners is different. You know, they come in here as an underdog, so they're hanging it out there. Stanford seems to be trying to hang on.
Oklahoma seems so focused early on. Chris Brooks won the title on the parallel bars at Penn State this year, second against Minnesota and Iowa. Speaking of Penn State, Casey Sandy, #1 in the country in the all-around. And Bart, the Big Ten Gymnast of the Year in 2008.
He, of course, competed for the Canadian national team at the World Championships in 2007. Very good on the pommel horse, and I like his technique and his elevation over the pommel. Very aggressive in his swing. Notice he seems very assertive. Oh, couple of form breaks. But see, he just powers through this routine. That's what I like about his style, is that even when he's a little off, he keeps the rhythm going. He's very strong. And keeps fighting. Nice combination at the end here. Several skills on one pommel and pirouetting up to a handstand. Good finish for Casey Sandy.
Well, Bart, he didn't look exhausted at all. Most athletes look exhausted after this.
It's your good point. In fact, he's very strong and his technique is good. And even when he's a little off on this move here called a Wu, invented by a Chinese gymnast, his form broke, but he still kept powering through the exercise.
Sandy with a 14.80 on the pommel horse. Sandy ranking in the top 9 nationally in all 6 events. Let's go back to Jonathan Horton, who had a huge week. Recently named the 2008 Nissen Emery Award winner. It goes to the top senior male gymnast in America. This is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy. Mark Williams said it's really hard to put into words what this young man has meant to the Sooners.
Well, Jonathan's just one of those athletes that has it all. I mean, he's very talented. He's smart about what he wants to do. He wants to come in the gym and get things done every single day. So for me, it's a pretty easy job. You know, I give him a direction and he goes and goes. So it's been fantastic. You know, he's probably the most talented kid that I've ever worked with, most dedicated to what he's doing, and he's had a phenomenal career so far. We're just looking forward to having a good end to his career, too.
The 6th winner from Oklahoma. They had been tied with Penn State. Of course, he joins you. You were the inaugural winner for the Sooners.
Well, it's a great thrill to win that Student Athlete Award, no question about it. John Horton, 4th in the World Championships in the all-around last year. And such an intense leader for the Oklahoma Sooners. I like how aggressive he is. Beautiful under bar work, those giant to double backs. One was tucked, one was piked. Very nice execution throughout. He doesn't quite have a fluid swing like some of other gymnasts like Sho Nakamori, but the difficulty was good and very clean execution. Let's take a look at this giant double back in the piked position. He has a little bit of a knee form break there, which is a minor deduction, but a very high level of difficulty in that skill. Good intensity, but just slightly over-rotated, but much better than we saw in his vault where he actually put his hands down. So Horton doing a little bit better now.
Jonathan Horton with a 15.20 here at the national team competition. His season high was 15.65 this year. After 2 rotations, Oklahoma still sitting on top. Michigan, after that 4th place finish in the Big Ten, has climbed to number 2. The NCAA Men's Volleyball Championship moves to Irvine, California. Semifinal coverage begins May 1st at 9 p.m. on ESPN2. For more information on the 2008 Men's Volleyball Championship, go to ncaa.com, the official online home for all 88 championships. Back to Stanford University for the NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championships. And Bart, what about the average score per gymnast so far?
Well, this is really the only way we can compare apples to apples because not every team has done the same number of rotations. But after everybody's done 2 rotations, that gives you a sense of where they stand relatively.
And rotation 3 right now, Stanford will be on the floor. Illinois, you talk about the pommel horse, how difficult it is, but the Fighting Illini, number 1 in the country. And speaking of number 1, Daniel Ribeiro, yet another rookie from the Fighting Illini. He ranks number 1 individually.
And this young man is a rock. He's the Big Ten champion this year. He won by more than a point at the Big Ten championships. He can really swing. He's just a freshman. His father, Zhao, was an Olympian in 1980 from Brazil. Oh, nice move right at the beginning. That's called a full Stockley, where he twists his hand and does 360 on one pommel.
We mentioned winning by a point. That's huge in this competition.
It absolutely is. And anybody who can score 15 points on the pommel horse is a rock. And he scored 15s in every meet but twice this year.
Wow, only a freshman.
Very nice technique, very high level of difficulty. Similar skills that we saw from Casey Sandy from Penn State, but his form is cleaner. Nice finish. Expect a big score.
Best freshman on the horse at Illinois since Ben Newman, who won Big Ten titles 3 years in a row. A 15.250. How big is that?
That's big. The guy's fearless. I love it.
On the floor, David Sender, the senior from Stanford, Arlington Heights, Illinois. A lot of gymnasts coming from Illinois, as you did.
Well, the Chicago suburban areas, many of the high school programs have outstanding coaching and facilities. Look at this, double-double, and he drills it. First pass for David Sender. This next pass is a combination tumbling run. 1.5, front full, 1 and 3. Oh, and he's out of bounds. Okay, now if you go out of bounds on a move like that where you roll out, you lose 0.3 of a point for both feet rolling out of bounds. Not a huge error. But in this competition, it's going to come down to 0.1 of a point, separating the first and second place teams. So All of those points add up. 5 years on the senior national team. He competed in the World Championships for the U.S. in 2006, and he certainly is a factor, one of those athletes who will be considered for a spot on the Olympic team in Beijing this summer, particularly because of his strength on floor and vault. Very high, 2.5, punch Branny. A lot of difficulty in this exercise. Stanford finally getting back on track. They seem looser now and more focused. Beautiful double layout at the end for Sender. Solid scores on floor for the entire team for Stanford. They're back in the rhythm.
A 15.20 for David Sender. He scored a 15.80 at the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation meet. Tommy Ramos, two-time Big Ten champ on the rings. And, of course, it was his performance last year at Penn State, Bart, as we well remember, that helped the Nittany Lions edge out Oklahoma for the national championship.
And what a thrilling final rotation that was, with this and Emory Award winner last year, Matt Cohen, and Tommy Ramos nailing their ring routines. Beautiful start. That move's called an Azarian around to an L cross, press up to an inverted cross. Watch for the positions. He needs to be well down into the rings on all of those inverted iron cross moves. His body needs to be completely level with the floor on those Maltese moves. Very nice positions. And look at this, pressing up from an L cross to a Maltese. Anytime you go uphill, strength move to strength move, you earn bonus points.
Looks pretty physically fit, but he really battled some injuries this year, too.
And a solid layout double. Now, some gymnasts may twist that for even more difficulty, but he had so much difficulty in the strength moves and the quality positions. I expect a big score. Really good execution throughout. Just a little swing here in the rings before the dismount. But like all these guys, they've all suffered lots of injuries. Gymnastics is tough on the body, but he did plant that layout double nicely.
Tommy Ramos, ranked number 7. Whoa, a 16 on the still rings. A great score for Tommy Ramos. And Bart, talk about injuries. How about Taki Abdullah-Simmons, the returning all-round champion? He's had his share of bumps, breaks, and bruises this year.
He's had several surgeries throughout his collegiate career, and most recently, a couple of weeks ago, he dislocated his finger. So Mark Williams has been disappointed that he hasn't been able to train at the level that he normally does coming into the national championships. No! I can't believe that on the first move of the routine. Actually, one of the more simple release moves.
Your timing's impeccable. Watch his hand. You mentioned his fingers. Looks like he just couldn't grip that bar.
Oh, and he has more challenging release moves coming up in this routine. Let's see how he can recover. Now, he also performed poorly on the parallel bars, so he's not having a great day so far. Look at that. Beautiful. Double back over the bar with a full twist. That was the more difficult release move that you would expect a gymnast to have trouble with. Mark Williams tells us that this young man is the emotional leader of the team. He's the one who calls the meetings, gets guys all pumped up, gets the cheers going, and gets everybody psyched up. We'll see if his emotion is affected with, so far, what would be a very disappointing start for him, both on the parallel bars and the high bar.
Taki Abdullah-Simmons, the first African-American who won the all-round at the NCAA. You see a 13.2. Not his best performance on that apparatus. But you know what? They say he's the consummate team guy. Taki Abdullah-Simmons says it's all about the team championship. And that's why he's still jacked up as Oklahoma has the lead. More from Stanford University to come. Welcome back inside Maples Pavilion as we take a look at our storyline, brought to you by Coke Zero. Keep in mind the last two teams, Oklahoma and Norman 2 years ago, Penn State and State College last year, both winning the national championship at home. So if Stanford's going to pull it off, of course, you go down to the bottom part. It usually comes down to the last rotation.
It certainly will. And, of course, Oklahoma will be on a strong event for them, rings, and Stanford will be on a big event for them, vault.
Rotation number 4 now. Oklahoma moves to the floor. And Penn State, this is Jason Chu. Did not compete last year, Bart. He sat out, but he was one of these highly recruited athletes out of St. John Bosco High School in Los Angeles.
Former junior national team member. Oh, nice technique. Just a little shorter rotation on what they call a Sukahara double twist. Very high.
15.850. Very high indeed. Let's go back over with the Golden Bears of Cal. This is Tim McNeil, a 2-time champ from last year in the pommel horse and the parallel bars. We asked him recently, which one does he prefer?
Pommel horse, probably because it's my favorite event. I love working on it for hours at a time, so it just comes naturally to me.
Well, that's a rarity, Bart, huh?
Yeah, pommel horse is one of those acquired tastes. You either love it or you hate it. And Tim is so technically sound here. I can see why he loves pommel horse. He does a very high level of difficulty in this routine, a very long exercise, so he racks up lots of points for difficulty.
How exhausting is this by the time these guys are done?
Well, they do sometimes as many as 40 different circling type movements in one exercise. So there is an endurance factor, no question, because you're on one arm and then the other going back and forth. And you notice those wraps on his forearms. Those are to prevent the pain from essentially forearm splints, which are like shin splints, but you get them on your forearms when you work all day on the pommel horse. Very complicated routine. Difficult skills all the way through the end and a nice pirouette finish. Now Cal has done very poorly prior to McNeil on pommel horse, so they needed a strong performance there.
Tim McNeil, the second Golden Bear to win 2 national titles in the same year. Let's take another look at it.
Take a look at this move right here. Watch the left hand. He turns his hand and does 360-degree spin on one hand on one pommel. Very difficult. You can see why gymnasts end up with forearm splints.
Well, McNeil, the senior out of Falls Church, Virginia, ecstatic that they actually beat Stanford this year. Look at that, 15.40 on the horse, almost as high as his personal high of 15.750. Tyler Yamauchi now of Illinois ran into Yoshi Hayasaki, the head coach at the hotel, and he was just ecstatic the fact that they finished second at the Big Ten.
Yeah, they seem to be peaking at the right time, and a lot of it has to do with this young man. Of course, Yamauchi is one of 6 seniors, so Illinois is graduating several stars off their team. It's a good opportunity to take a look at the different body styles. Tim McNeil had longer levers, longer arms. He's great on swing type events. Notice that there are shorter levers on Tyler Yamauchi. His arms are shorter, which allows him to do those strength type moves. So he is actually built perfectly well for doing something as complex as these strength moves on rings.
It's interesting. I mean, you talked about injuries. The first 5 events, he had 2 individual titles on both in the rings. The last 5, 4 individual titles.
Oh, and a huge dismount. A double twisting double back. One of the more difficult dismounts you can do, and he just nailed it. This is what he sees from overhead, man. There's a lot going on. How do they find the floor?
That's a great shot.
He drills it like a dart going into a dartboard. Nice.
Illinois' Tyler Yamauchi from Sugar Land, Texas, a 15.8 on the still rings. That's his season best for him. Let's go back with Casey Sandy now on the ball.
He should be doing a Yurchenko-style vault to a double twist.
Ooh.
Talk about drilling a landing. And that was effortless for him. I'm very impressed with his technique, and of course his power is quite evident. It appears that he could probably even do a more difficult vault with another half twist or even another full twist. But look how far he is from the horse, and what solid technique. Randy Jepson says, that's my guy.
Just like the movie you were in, that's sticking it, huh? Jepson saying that he's one of the most grounded and humble athletes he's ever coached.
16.1, a big score on vault.
Let's go to the floor. Stephen Legendre, the freshman from Oklahoma, Bart, is #1 in the country. And the last 3 competitions, he's knocked it out of the ballpark. 15.8, all 3.
Watch this first tumbling run. That is just next to impossible. It's what they call an Arabian double front with a full twist at the end. Now watch this second one. He's just going to do a double front right into a front layout. I've never seen this before. Incredible to get that timing just right.
Such poise.
So impressed with this young man. What a future he has in front of him. In terms of potential, he's got it all. He's strong, he's flexible, he's fearless. He doesn't seem to buckle under any pressure, and this, of course, is a freshman in the NCAA team final. Look at that pass. He almost muscled it. How can you do that on floor?
I mentioned the fact he's a freshman. He won the all-around and the floor the first 3 weeks of the season.
He was very well coached as a junior gymnast at the World Olympic Gymnastic Academy down in Plano, Texas. Now Mark Williams very excited that when he's losing Jonathan Horton and Taki Abdullah Simmons, he's got another superstar ready to step right into their footsteps. Incredible. This is the most difficult routine being attempted in the final with a 6.5 degree of difficulty. Very impressive. This blows my mind. This is the Arabian double front. It's in a pike position, and right at the end, he wraps another full twist. It's very difficult to judge the timing on these forward flipping skills so that you can judge the landing just right. But he is so strong and his technique is so good, he does those effortlessly.
Boy, he certainly does. Legendre with a 16. His season high, Bart, had been 15.8. So after 4 rotations, there you have it, Oklahoma, Michigan, Penn State, Stanford at home, coming up in the 4th spot, followed by Illinois and California. Coming up next, Stanford moves to that difficult apparatus, the pommel horse. We're back at Stanford University at the NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championships after this. And back at Stanford University, along with Bart Connor, Mike Gleason here. And Bart, the average score per gymnast after 4 rotations.
Oklahoma still has a solid lead, but Stanford's coming into some big events for them, assuming they can get through the all-important pommel horse coming up next.
That would be huge, and one they probably, in the back of the mind, worried a little bit.
That's true, because at the conference championships, they had a disastrous performance, and that's what allowed Oklahoma to beat them in the MPSF championship this year. So David Sender, their solid all-arounder, not known for his work on the pommel horse, although he has a very difficult routine. They could use a good score here. Not bad work as he travels across the horse back and forth, fulfilling all the requirements. Oh no, he's fighting a little. Oh, got his shoulders a little bit too far forward and he couldn't recover. Let's see what happened here. He was doing a very difficult routine. In fact, he does one of the more difficult routines on his team. But what happens with Sender is that he gives away so many points in terms of form deductions and technique deductions that it affects his final score. Now, when you fall off these days, you lose 0.8 of a point from your total score. You have to continue the exercise from where you fell off. And a strong finish for Sender, but that's not probably going to be one of the 4 best counting scores for his team.
How difficult to get back up on the horse after that, a 12.6. Let's go to Paul Regari now, the freshman out of Illinois.
Well, we saw his great performance on the floor. I expect solid vault here as well. Oh, yeah.
What's the key to sticking it?
Well, you know, he has, first of all, great technique and power throughout, so he sets himself up for a good landing. You might notice his special technique is he keeps his feet separated. Now, the judges will take a deduction for this, but it gives him a little bit more of room for error to stick that landing.
Well, his season high 16.05, and he gets a 16.10 here at the national championship. Yeah. Sho Nakamori back on the horse for Stanford.
This could be a highlight. He can really swing on this event. He's so good on the swing events, partly because of his technique, partly because of his body style. Look at how high he swings above the pommels. And a little bit difference, you can notice his technique as opposed to David Senders. He swings a lot freer. See him sort of swinging it out there, a wider sweep on his circle momentum.
How does that make it more difficult or easier?
It makes it easier if you can do it, but it's certainly a technique that has to be mastered. Nice elevation over the pommels, very clean form as he travels across, back and forth. Those add up in terms of difficulty points. That'll get a good score.
Nice performance for Sho Nakamori, the redshirt junior out of Alameda, California.
So technically sound in all of his gymnastics.
14.60.
Any score close to 15 in pommel horse is big these days.
Now Penn State's Casey Sandy on the parallel bars. 24 individual titles overall this year. 6 all-round titles. We already established the fact he's #1 in the country in the all-round.
Watch how good he is in these underbar swinging elements. Those are called peaches. A peach basket when you go underneath the bar like that. He is really strong on those moves. There's great swing in the giant and a giant to a double back. Now where he gives up some deductions though is in basic body positions and form. You can see he's a little sloppy here and there. Whoa, way over on that handstand on that simple move called a stutz. He has a lot of difficulty in this routine. But unfortunately, several technical errors and form breaks.
Sandy, the junior from Brampton, Ontario. He arrived 2 years ago as a 21-year-old freshman, but one of several players or gymnasts for Randy Jepson, not from the U.S.
In fact, 5 of his 17 athletes are from outside of the United States.
It's a lot of international flavor with the Nittany Lions, last year's national champion. Sandy getting a 14.90 on the parallel bars. Tyler Yamauchi of the Fighting Illini of Illinois.
Well, we saw his great ring routine. Let's see what he can come up with on vault. He does a handspring double front. Very nice. Now, you saw him step over that line. That will be a deduction for being out of line with the vaulting table. But otherwise, technique was great.
A 16.10. That's a season high for him. It had been a 15.90. Now Chris Harper back on the pommel horse. Harper putting in some strong meets for Tom Gleelmy and Stanford on this apparatus this year.
He has a very difficult exercise when he does it well. He did not perform well in the qualifying round. Lots of difficulty. Good technique.
Looks pretty focused right here.
Very clean. That triple Russian on the end is worth a lot of bonus points. It's when you keep your body in that prone position and you go around 3 times. Traveling across the horse, pommel to pommel and back. Very nice.
He's won 3 times this year on the horse.
Oh! Isn't that a surprise? On the last skill of the routine, one of those triple Russians.
Tom Gleelmy, the head coach of Stanford, what would he be saying in a situation
Well, basically,
like this?
he's reminding him he has to do a skill that fulfills the dismount requirement. Remember, the judges add up the 9 most difficult skills plus the dismount. So Gleelmy is reminding him that he has to do a skill that is difficult enough to fulfill the dismount requirement. Let's see what he does. He'll travel back down to the end. And here it is. He'll do a Fedorchenko, or 3 times around in that Russian position, and that fulfills the dismount requirement. But what an unfortunate missed opportunity for Stanford on the pommel horse.
13.75. You can almost feel his frustration behind the scenes over in the practice area. Oklahoma obviously realizing that Stanford has struggled on the horse. And they're next to the horse.
This is no easy route for Oklahoma as well, because pommel horse will likely be the difference whether Oklahoma is a contender coming down to the final rotation or not.
Chris Harper, he'll remember that for the rest of the night, maybe in the next couple of weeks. And keep in mind, he's ranked 6th in the country, and no sooner did I say that he won 3 times as he fell off the horse.
Well, that's the problem with this beast, but see if Oklahoma can hang on.
We're going to go out there, we're going to swing, shoot for par, nothing too special, you know. We're just going to enjoy it, have a good time, finish off the meet strong.
And if they finish strong enough and win the national championship, that'll be 5 of the last 7 years for Oklahoma. For Horton, it'll be 3 out of 4 national titles. Coming up, the Sooners get their shot at the horse. Welcome back to Stanford University and the NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship, presented on ESPN by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And back inside Maples Pavilion, Bart Connor, we're heading down, not the home stretch, but we're getting close. Rotation 6. You see Oklahoma on the horse. Stanford will be on the rings, Cal on the vault, Illinois the parallel bars, in Penn State, last year's champs, on the high bar. Let's go with Jason Lawton now on the horse, a junior from Northridge, California, for the Sooners. Performed well, Bart, in this apparatus this year. Tied for first in the horse against Nebraska. Finished runner-up at the conference meet.
And the first person on the pommel horse is one of the most critical performances of the meet, because we saw that this is a clutch event. And if the first guy goes out and hits a clean routine, that sets the pace for everybody else. Everybody else can relax a little bit knowing that they got one good score in the bank. This is a great routine, very clean execution. And he looks smooth and confident throughout.
I think confident would be the operative word. It exudes confidence.
Well done. Great start for the Sooners on the pommel horse, which can be a tricky event for them.
Now let's go to the rings now with Bryant Haddon, a junior from Cypress, Texas, performing for Stanford.
Bryant is very strong on this event. Solid all-around performance. Ranked 10th in the country on the rings. Good positions in the Iron Cross. He's very calm. I've noticed that throughout his entire career at Stanford. He doesn't panic. He seems to be really within control. Shoulders a little high in that Maltese cross position. You want to be right down inside the level of the rings. Just a little too high. A minor deduction, maybe a 1/10 of a point. Judges have to look for these angles. There's a very clean iron cross position, and the way he swung to it in that move called a whip it, he went right to the iron cross, which is the perfect technique. Very good event for Stanford. Ranked 4th in the country on the rings, but they've been solid all year long. But all year long, they haven't actually had their A lineup in until they got to this national championship.
Haddon won this event at the conference championship with a 15.7.
And a very nice pike double front dismount, a rare dismount going forward off the rings, and he stuck it.
So Stanford trying to make a move here in rotation number 7. That's Bryant Haddon. His high this year, 15.7, gets a 15.85, so good performance. Jonathan Horton, boy, thinking. He's really thinking hard before he gets on the horse. You see Lawton, Ian Jackson, Corey English, all their scores. And now it's the 15-time All-Americans turn.
Ian Jackson had an unfortunate fall. Corey English came through with a clutch routine, so they got 2 solid routines in the bank for Oklahoma here. Horton is so strong. He does that scissor half turn up to a handstand like it was nothing. Now, John's technique is actually pretty good on this event. He swings pretty high, good form. He doesn't quite have the difficulty level of somebody like Sho Nakamori. But what he does, he usually does well. Oh, he's just having to grind it a little bit there. Couple of form deductions. What I like about Horton, though, he's not coming off. It doesn't matter what the situation is. He's going to put some arm on it and get it done.
He's a bulldog. He's a bulldog. Good point, though. You could tell he was a little bit tighter, maybe, than some of these other athletes on this particular event. A 13.650 as we move to Illinois. This is Brian Liskovitz, a sophomore from Hillsborough, New Jersey. And Bart, he's actually gotten better and better and better, especially the last 4 times he's competed.
Absolutely, somewhere between 14.8 and 15.25 at the most recent Big Ten championships. He's really good in the swing elements on parallel bars when he swings below the bars with excellent form and technique. Ranked 9th in the country on parallel bars. Oh, just an uncharacteristic arm bend there. That was unnecessary.
It's amazing what you pick up and I don't.
He's having a good day, and the Illinois is having quite a good competition. They weren't expected to challenge for the top spot, but they're doing well.
Liskovitz's qualifying score is 15-0. That's what he gets, a 15.0 for the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Taki Abdullah Simmons, senior season, heading for the horse.
Not his favorite event for sure. But when he's on, he can swing it nicely. He's had a rough day, though. We saw him have trouble on the parallel bars and the high bar. Let's see if he can get it together on the pommel horse. And you can tell he's lumbering already. Oh, no!
Last year he seemed so strong. Those injuries have to be playing a factor.
Well, especially when you've dislocated your finger, you can't quite do the repetitions on events like pommel horse. You can imagine if you've had a dislocated finger, you can't train on this event like you normally would. So he doesn't look like he has the level of fitness that he's normally used to.
Since he won the all-round, Bart, he's had 2 off-season knee surgeries, a broken collarbone, groin surgery, chip bone in his ankle, the broken fingers, and something popped in his shoulder back in November. That's been hampering him as well.
He sure is a warrior, as are most of these guys. He said, one more event, let's rock. He's kind of the emotional leader of this team. He hasn't had a great day, though. He had problems on the parallel bars, the high bar, now the horse. He's got one more chance on the rings later.
And here's one of the stars for the Stanford Cardinal, David Sender. He was a finalist for the Nissen Emery Award. On the rings, his high in on this apparatus, a 16.35 at the Pacific Coast Classic this year.
Oh, he's world class on this event. Kip to a Maltese, press to a planche. Once again, going from a Maltese up to a planche, gets connection bonus. Very nice position in that Azarian roll around to Iron Cross. We've seen Stanford kind of low in the standings all day long. They chose to start on some of the lower scoring events. Now they're coming into the high scoring events like the rings, and of course they're going to finish on the vault, which is a very good event for them. So we expect them to be challenging for the championship here after these 2 strong events. Very good, clean control of the rings. He has a difficult dismount. Double back with a full twist in the laid out position. A big hop on the landing.
David Sender with a 15.50 on the still rings. And as far as the horse, Stanford had struggled, and the Cardinal wind up doing better than Oklahoma. The Sooners with a 56.20. Stanford in 4th. We're heading for rotation 7, Bart.
That's right, but Stanford's coming on the highest scoring event, the vault. So I expect it's going to come down to Oklahoma and Stanford for the championship in the final rotation.
Well, the fans are getting into it. Chris Harper hoping some of his frustration will be erased with a national championship. The Oklahoma fans are hoping that they can make it 5 of 7. For Horton and Abdullah Simmons, it'll be 3 of 4. The NCAA Men's Volleyball Championship moves to Irvine, California. Semifinal coverage begins May 1st at 9 p.m. on ESPN2. For more information on the 2008 Men's Volleyball Championship, go to NCAA.com, the official online home for all 88 championships. Mike Gleason along with Bart Connor, and the emotion in this building, Bart, is starting to build to a crescendo.
Very exciting. Stanford feels like, hey, they're at home. They've been #1 all year long. This is their meet to win.
Stanford fans, Oklahoma fans, starting to get vocal here as we move into rotation number 7. And the standings right now, look at, as we talked about, it'll probably and will come down to the last event, and things are tight.
They are tight, and Stanford's in 4th right now, but you take a look at the average scores, it's very, very close, and Stanford is coming up on the highest scoring event by far, which is the vault. That's why we expect it'll come down to Oklahoma and Stanford.
And in the rotation number 7, you mentioned Stanford on the vault. Keep in mind that Oklahoma is ranked *1 in the country on the still rings, and that's where they will be in rotation number 7.
It's going to be good.
And we start things off with Stanford on the vaults. Greg Terzakarians, the redshirt sophomore from Campbell, California.
This guy's a terrific 4-event guy for Stanford. Floor vault, P-bars, and high bar. You can normally count on him to deliver a solid score.
Back in 2005, the Northern California state champion in the all-around.
Not bad, a Suk double twist, a little out of line, but he did not go over the white boundary, which means he won't get a deduction for being out of line.
Terzakarians, a 15.7, pretty good score.
Stanford's pretty pumped up. They know they're coming into a good event.
And Casey Sandy, the junior from Brampton, Ontario, for the defending champions from last year, Penn State. Qualifying score of 15.5 on the floor.
He really is a very balanced all-around gymnast. I made some comments earlier that I think he could improve his form and polish a little bit, but there's no question that he has very high level of difficulty on all apparatus. Good opening combination tumbling run. Those bounding skills have the opportunity of earning bonus points by connecting them.
Remember his freshman year, Bart. His first 5 meets of his rookie season, won the all-around title 3 times. Had 21 top 3 finishes, wound up fracturing his arm in the high bar. And then last year at State College, even though he had a good meet, he twisted that ankle in warm-ups.
Yeah, well, you know, it seems to be the running theme. We mentioned about Takil Abdullah-Simmons. I mean, these guys are beaten up, and gymnastics is so hard on the body, and even more so these days than in the past when I competed, because the level of difficulty that they're required to do now is so demanding. They have to do so many different types of skills and varieties of skills that it is just brutal. So these guys all should have stock in some company that makes ice packs. You saw them yesterday after training. I mean, they're all wrapped everywhere, aren't they?
It's unbelievable as you check out their bios how many surgeries these young men have. And pound for pound on campus, probably the strongest athletes.
I've always felt that way. Nice whip to 2.5 twist. Good control on the landing. I'm sure because of the high level of difficulty, it'll be a solid score for Sandy.
A 15.40 on the floor. His high this year was 15.85. As Sandy ranked number 1 in the all-around. Josh Dixon now, a rookie for Stanford on the vault.
They have 6 terrific freshmen stepping onto the team this year, so even though they're going to lose some of their leaders like Dylan Carney and David Sender, Chris Harper, they are going to replace them quickly with some really talented youngsters, and this young man has got it all. 4 times a member of the junior national team. Oh! Did he drop that in or what?
That's some of Lester Hayes' stickum on the bottom of his feet that time.
That was sweet. Nice technique, power, beautiful body position in the air. Wow. And he drills it. That's what you're going to need if you want to win the team championship today. Wow.
Tom Gleelmy saying Sender, Nakamori, the anchors, but these freshmen very impressive for the Cardinal this year. And as you mentioned, he's one right there. A lot of emotion.
That's judged from a 16.2 maximum score, and he gets a 16.05.
Wow.
Even the judges couldn't find much wrong with that.
That's a season high for him. As Josh Dixon, the freshman out of San Jose, California, comes up big for the Cardinal. Here's Tim McNeil, the senior from Cal.
They did not use McNeil in the qualifying round. Stanford qualified easily into this final session, so they chose to rest him. Like all the gymnasts, he's been nursing injuries, but when you see him on the parallel bars, you're really looking at a master of this event. Look at the beautiful height in that giant to tuck double back. Look at the technique on these giant swings. Such precision. Locked arms on that underbar move called a peach basket to a handstand. I love watching this young man here. He really is a master of this event.
Ranked number 1 at 15.50 in the country, ahead of Casey Sandy on this apparatus.
Nicely done for Tim McNeil. The head coach, Barry Weiner, he knows that they don't have the depth of Stanford and Oklahoma. In fact, he has less than half as many scholarships as those schools do, but he always puts a quality gymnastics team on the floor. Even if they are a little thin, there's no denying the exquisite talent.
Defending national champion in this event, a 15.55 for the senior Tim McNeil. And Bart, let's go back to the vault. Alex Buscalia, another freshman, 3 times he has scored a 15.85 on the vault.
In fact, he scored a 15.75 in the qualifying round here. He does a Yurchenko-style vault, once again, where you do a round off before the vaulting table and go backwards onto it. Complicated technique. Oh!
Oh,
I could tell right away he came on the horse too high. He wasn't going to get a good push. Let's see what happened here. Watch his fingertips barely get onto the vaulting table. which completely messes up his trajectory off of the vaulting table. That is disastrous for Stanford. That's not what they were looking for.
Well, 14.7.
Remember, the best 4 out of 6, so you can drop 2 low scores. But they were hoping for a big score from Biscaglia.
Back to the rings, Oklahoma's Ian Jackson. See his qualifying score of 14.90. He scored a 15-3 against the Minnesota Golden Gophers earlier this year. I'm telling you, Bart, we come down to the final event
Seems
every
like
year.
every year.
Every year.
And you know, there's so much focus on the stars like Taki Abdullah Simmons and Jonathan Horton. But really, it's the meat of this team from Oklahoma that's keeping him in this. It's guys like Chris Brooks, Jason Lawton, Kyle McNamara, Jake Messina, and now Ian Jackson performing well on the rings.
That's a great point. This is the team championship.
A little shaky in that handstand. His rings are turned in a little bit. I'd like to see those rings turned out a little bit more to show a stronger line in the handstand position. Good dismount, though. Now, he made a good choice there. He didn't do the most difficult dismount, but he chose to do one that he could do cleanly. Every coach has that decision to make. Do we go for a really hard routine and open the door for deductions, or do we go for a clean routine and try to get the maximum of the execution points available? Good choice for Jackson.
Jackson, the sophomore out of Harrisburg, PA, with a 14.90. We're heading down the stretch. Oklahoma, #1 on the rings. Stanford, shooting for their first national championship since 1995. Coming up, we'll see David Sender, the likes of Jonathan Horton, Taki Abdullah Simmons. He has one more shot to help contribute to Oklahoma's cause. Welcome back to Stanford University, the 2008 NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship. You want drama? We've got drama. We're in rotation 7. This is Jacob Messina on the still rings for Oklahoma. Performed well at the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation meet. And Bart, at the top of the show, we said it usually comes down to the final events. It has. And right now it's been decided, as you predicted, between Stanford and Oklahoma.
And Messina's had a great day so far. A very strong performance for Oklahoma on both the pommel horse and the parallel bars. He's doing his part. I really like his body line and technique on the rings.
Out of Matthews, North Carolina, ironically, Tom Gleelmy, the head coach of Stanford, used to coach in Matthews.
Awesome dismount for Messina. Laid out, full out. And he stuck that landing. It's going to come down to things like stuck landings because this is going to be close.
Tim Gentry, a freshman from Plano, Texas, member of the Stanford Cardinal. He had a 15.75 against Cal in the vault. That's his high this year.
He can really boom a vault. It's the handspring double front. We saw it from Legendre. No! And a hand down. This is so high and so far, hard to control the landing. Handspring double front, over-rotates just like we saw Jonathan Horton. A couple of big steps and a hand down. That's not what they needed. That's 0.35 less than he did in the qualifying round in their second botched vault over there.
Let's take a look at our storyline brought to you by Coke Zero. Taki Abdullah Simmons, last year's all-round champion, scoreless in 3 routines. Scoreless as far as using his score in the team competition.
It certainly seems like that dislocated finger has really affected his ability to get in the kind of shape he needs to be in to do well and contribute. He's got one more chance here on the rink. Now, this is a great event for him. Let's see if he's got the power to get through. If there's ever a time when they needed a great performance, it's from him right now. His last routine as a senior for the Sooners in team competition. He's the emotional leader of this team in every way. Can he back it up? Very clean. Look at the body line. Great control of the rings. ready.
Oh.
Nice dismount, just a little hop. Finally, he delivers for the Sooners today.
Perseverance.
Well, his technique on rings is great and his form is impeccable. He chose to do a little bit of an easier dismount than some of the other gymnasts. Slight hop on the landing, should be about a 1/10 of a point deduction.
Wow, the senior from Philadelphia gets a 15.4.
He's given all that he has today, there's no question.
Now, Bart Connor down to the final vault for David Sender as far as team competition at Stanford. Earlier this year, before they got out of the gate, they said they're the deepest team, and he has said they have to win the national championship, and they think they will. Well, here it is, coming down the stretch.
And boy, he has a big vault. It's a Yurchenko 2.5 twister. He's one of the few people in the world who does it. Oh, that was nice. Big step. Was it enough?
He'd like to have that back, I think, with the body English here, showing his frustration because he didn't really stick that landing.
Now, this vault is judged from a 6.6 degree of difficulty, meaning a 16.6 is the highest score you can get. A big step like that could be as much as a 1/2 a point deduction. And let's face it, this meet's going to come down to minor details. Two of his teammates botched their vault, so it added a lot of pressure to Sender.
A 16.25.
A very, very good score for Sender.
You know, Bart, you know what it's going to come down to? This young man right here, the senior, the Nissen Emery Award winner this year, and he's #1 ranked gymnast in the country on this event.
And he's going to need the best performance of the year right now for Oklahoma to win it.
You couldn't have written a script any better than this.
It's like Michael Jordan. You want that guy to have the ball at the end of the game. That's how it is with Jonathan Horton on the rings. He's so good here and so competent here. And in reality, he wants to be in this position.
That's kind of the story of his career. Remember his freshman year, he knocked off Ohio State on the final event when he scored on the vault.
Nice positions, good control. When he's on, he has a routine that's judged from a 16.6 degree of difficulty. Look at the controls. Complete mastery of the rings. This is the best I've seen him. Oh! He drills it.
Wow.
A layout, full out, a high level difficulty dismount, and he nailed it. Is it going to be enough? Complete control of the rings, beautiful technique and form throughout. Extreme level of difficulty, perfect body positions, and then boom! No movement on the dismount. Here's another look.
Oh, you could almost feel the sigh of all the Stanford fans as they hold their breath as they await the final score. Jonathan Horton.
This team is proud of their effort. There's no question about it. 16.1. Is that going to be enough?
That's his season high. Definitely saving the best for last. So now as we await the final results, the tension's pretty thick inside Maples Pavilion. There it is, Oklahoma. They did it.
Unbelievable.
Oh, feel the pain over there with Stanford. Yet another national title for the Oklahoma Sooners.
The NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championship is presented on ESPN by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We'll pick you up.
Welcome back to Stanford University, where the Oklahoma Sooners are crowned the 2008 NCAA Men's Gymnastics Champions, this time on Stanford turf. Oklahoma winning it by 45/100ths of a point. Oklahoma's 8th national title in gymnastics, surpassing the wrestling and football programs. So the Oklahoma gymnasts now the kings on the Norman campus. Our Pontiac high performance moment belonging to a rookie from Oklahoma, Stephen Legendre. Here he is on the vault, coming up with the high score of 16.40. And Legendre also came in ranked #1 in the country on the floor, and he pulled up a 16.0, the highest score there as well. Other top performers joining Legendre, Tim McNeil, also winners in 2 events as far as score, the pommel horse and the parallel bars. Let's go downstairs now with 2-time Olympic gold medalist Bart Conner with this year's champs.
All right, the Sooners once again victorious. Mark, every year is a little bit different. This one, could you have expected to pull it off here at Stanford?
Well, after prelims, we knew it was going to be an uphill battle. I had total faith in these guys to have a great meet and just see where things finished up. And it was dramatic, but we won it. Good job, guys!
Hey, John, a little shaky start there, but some of the other guys had to step up and really deliver for the team, in addition to some of your fine performances today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a deep team. We got a lot of heart. And, Taki and I had some mistakes, but these guys, that's what it's all about. They backed us up. Incredible team, incredible competition. I couldn't have scripted anything different, just like Mark said.
Congratulations, you guys, on another victory.
Thanks.
That's right, Bart, another victory for the Oklahoma Sooners. They had back-to-back titles in 02 and 03, again in 05 and 06. Rob, of a chance of a three-peat by Penn State last year, but now Oklahoma back on top with yet another national championship. Any final thoughts, Bart?
Well, I tell you, this is the most dramatic team meet of the year anywhere in the world, and I'm glad to be here with my friend.
So congratulations to the Oklahoma Sooners, for Bart Conner and the entire ESPN crew. This is Mike Gleason saying so long from inside Maples Pavilion on the campus of Stanford University. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Oklahoma, the 2008 men's NCAA national champs.